Oh, thank you all. It's been an amazing day for sticking around for my talk about the dust sensor cube. My name is Matthew Schroyer. Full-time, I work at a National Science Foundation grant at the University of Illinois called Enlist for entrepreneurial leadership in STEM teaching and learning. A big component of what we do there is train teachers to be more entrepreneurial, going to other teachers to start collaborations that can change the face of STEM education and adapt to new science standards coming down the pipeline with regards to engineering especially. What I do for that grant is I analyze social networks to understand how teachers are exchanging innovations, ideas, resources, how it changes after they receive training. And also I go into schools and teach students how to build drones. It's a little bit of a hobby of mine, and it's something that can help transform STEM education and allows students to take on the role of engineers and scientists, and also realizing that these can be important tools for journalists. I began the Professional Society of Drone Journalists back in late 2011. We're up to 250 members in 30 countries. And but this talk is not going to be about drones, but some of this technology is used in the drones that we work with at the grant and at the PSDJ. Mostly what I want to talk about is this. So this is what it looks like when you have a million tires go up in smoke. This is a small town not far from where I live called Hoopeston. And I think we can all identify with that guy once in a while, but this is a pretty relatively common event in the United States. About almost 200 of these fires happen each year, and every time toxic fumes go up into the air. And so it takes a lot of time to put out these fires. This one took a couple days, and but the fire continued to smolder for up to 30 days after that event. It drew in more than a dozen firefighting units. Even robots came and helped out. So having a journalism background, I wanted to dig into the details and see what actually transpired at this town, because it seemed like there was a definite lack of information. And so I filed what are called FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. And I filed this with the state EPA and tried to understand what the people in the town were experiencing and feeling and what they were dealing with at the time. This is an email that was obtained through the FOIA. And the person living there said everyone had sore throats. There's not enough being done to mitigate the effects of this fire. This is another email saying that soot gets on children's feet while they're playing outside, and this is a concern because no one knows about the content of that soot. This is the one that really caught my attention, though. This is the superintendent of the school district in the area saying that school's going to begin soon, and the fire is still smoldering, and we're very close to this. There's a bad smell. Is there any information you can provide to help alleviate our concerns? There's a lack of data here that's just not being addressed. There's communication that's not happening between officials and people on the ground, and that's disturbing. So in looking for more details in my FOIA request, I asked specifically, what kind of environmental data can you provide me? Because I know that there were people on the ground from the state agency collecting air data. They used that air data to actually evacuate 500 homes, or approximately 2,000 people from the area. So I asked them, what exactly did you collect? What was so startling that you had to move everyone out of their homes? And 30 days went by and I got nothing, and then 60 days went by and I got nothing, and I had to talk to the attorney, or send a letter to the Attorney General's office asking what the deal was, and finally got those FOIA letters, but nothing in the way of data, except for this. We received your request that you want all documents containing air quality data, but we have no records responsive to your request. So even the people collecting the data did not choose to store it. So this was a problem, but it was something that I was familiar with as in going through my master's in journalism at the U of I. I was working on on the master's project, which is basically a thesis, and I chose to focus on a community, an environmental justice issue in this community near Chicago. It's Pilsen and a little village, or two communities with working class individuals, and they're both located near smelting plants, and they're both located near very dirty power plants. Some of the most dirty power plants in the country are in this little area, and this is something that the people there have to deal with. Interviewed people who had lupus and concerns, and it's an area that has a lot of crime, but I found that people were not really concerned about the crime. They're concerned about their health from the environment around them. They wanted more information as well. So this was also a community that did not have environmental data. Eventually what happened is a group organized in the Pilsen community went out, collected samples from the ground, sent that off to a lab, and came back with results that showed just an absurd level of lead in the environment. They used this data that they had collected to lobby the EPA and say, look, there's a problem in our community. Can you put up an official air monitor? And when the EPA actually ended up putting up an air monitor, they put it right on top of the school, which was great for the community because they were concerned about the kids first and foremost. And the results came back as such, and this is a visualization straight from the master's project, showing that there's a line there showing kind of the limit of what is acceptable according to the EPA, and then you have these huge spikes in certain times, showing that indeed there was more lead in the air than should have been there. So in other words, so the community had to collect the data first to actually lobby and mobilize and get this kind of response. The area was put under non-attainment, meaning that the smelting plant and the power plant in the area had to clean up the air in the area. So lead is one of basically a soup of combustion particles, organic compounds that go into this pollutant called PM2.5. Basically that means any particle in the air 2.5 microns or under is PM2.5, and this is a reference from the EPA and comparing it to the size of a hair and dust and pollen and beach sand. PM10 is another concern. It's larger things like dust, pollen, and mold. But PM2.5 is really kind of a larger health concern because when you breathe it in, it can get into your circulatory system and cause more damage. And so you can have less PM2.5 in your system before health problems arise. And this is an international concern, especially in countries where people have to rely on burning coal in their homes for heat, for food. Recently, the World Health Organization came out with a report classifying PM2.5 as a Class 1 carcinogen, up there with tobacco smoke and asbestos. They estimate it kills maybe 3.2 million people in the entire world every year. So it's a big health concern, but very hard to measure. So this is how you measure PM2.5 in the lab, and this is also how you measure it with a lot of the monitoring stations that are run. It's called a gravimetric impactor, and basically it's just a column of filters, and air is pumped through this device, and basically the particles impact these plates on the way down, and that gives you an indication of the mass of PM2.5 as you go down. The problem with this is it's bulky, it's expensive, and it's not really ideal if you want to have as many of these things in the environment as possible. But we wouldn't all be here today if it weren't for advances in sensor technology that lets us have Internet of Things. And fortunately, the same is the case here for PM2.5 measurement. So this is a sensor that we actually use in the DustDuino cube. It's manufactured by a company called Shinye. There's actually an example of this over in the other building with the Seed Company. They're a distributor of these sensors, and the operation is very simple in comparison. Basically, there's an LED light, not much different than in your television remote control. And this LED light shines within the box of the sensor. There's a receiver that picks up how this light is scattered, and through that is able to estimate a particle count. And if you have a particle count, you can, using some studies, assume that there is a size distribution, a mass distribution, and then that generates a result that's similar to EPA levels. So you can have something that you can roughly compare to EPA samples. Another advantage is this is low energy. It's cheap. And so you can have more of them in an area, even if one individual sensor is noisier than the others. And that's really important to pick the right sensor for the application, because this is not the first project to try to measure air quality and give that information to people. But a big drawback to a lot of previous programs and initiatives to measure air quality was that the sensors just were not quite right. So this is from a spec sheet for a sensor that picks up carbon monoxide, right? So we're all familiar with how deadly carbon monoxide can be. And this indicates the sensitivity of this particular sensor. The little red arrows point to the line that actually tells you about how the sensor reacts to carbon monoxide. And so I tore this basically apart and tried to understand what it was actually telling us. And so for this particular sensor here, if you're exposed to 8 hours of carbon monoxide at the lowest level that this sensor can pick up, you might start feeling some symptoms. And you can quickly see how even at 100 parts per million, then you'll start getting nausea and vomiting, and then death. So it's easy to see how much we have to go in terms of these particular sensors for certain gases. But I thought that the particulates is at a really good place for development. So I wanted to do something with this, and in the U of I community, if you're an engineer, and I'm not an engineer, but if you're an engineer and you're studying and you want to create something for a project or just an idea that you have, this is the place you go. This is the Community Fab Lab. It's based on the MIT Fab Lab system, meaning they have a general suite of tools that are just very useful for anyone that can come in off the street and make an idea happen. So we're talking about anything as simple as vinyl cutters to make stickers and decorations, to 3D printers, and to laser cutters. So this is actually the back room. So this is where the magic happens. If something breaks in the front room, you take it to the back, and the super nerds take over. And you can see there's a kind of a larger CNC machine back here. And also, this is the laser cutter. This is one of my favorite tools. This is also in the back room. This is where a lot of the soldering happens. But what makes the Fab Lab special is not necessarily the tools. It's the people that are there. They'll basically, in hacker terms, give the shirt off their back to help you. This is Andrew Knight Jr. Whenever I break something, he helps me fix it, which is awesome. I call this guy the Godfather. He probably would not agree with that title. He's a very nice guy, Jeff Ginger. He basically runs the lab and makes sure that when people come in, they get help immediately and they can do a number of projects right off the bat. One of the big problems that I had to figure out that I needed their help with was how to package all this together. So, I mean, I could prototype it, but if I really wanted to send it to someone else, it would have to come in a container. So this is kind of a first run idea of a press fit box. And this Fab Lab had developed some software to help you with just a few mouse clicks produce something that would be basically immediately cut out of the laser cutter engraver. So that was very helpful. And this is a result of that first round there, the DustDuino proto, with the help of the Community Fab Lab. And so after I hooked all this stuff up, I found that it was a very good, delicious bacon detector. So I was very happy there was a bacon truck out there this morning. I did not test my sensor out there by the bacon truck, but this was a good result for me because this is something I could identify with. I know that certain things happen in my house at a certain time, and when I get up at 7 a.m. I make bacon. So this was a good indicator for me. But actually, kidding aside, the home is kind of an unknown area in terms of environmental sensing. I mean, there hasn't been a wide range of studies to look at what you actually breathe in a normal house in a developed country. So, with that in mind, I sought even more help because I had a prototype, but I needed to perfect it. So this is the Makerspace Urbana. We're fortunate to have a lot of hacker communities in the U of I area. They helped out iron out some of the problems with the PCBs. They also hold a maker fair, which is a very handy place to meet with people, find out what their concerns are, and address them. And this is here with the drone. I'm kind of confusing this photo because I wasn't expecting that guy to pop up and take a photo. But it was a very good experience. Here is a lot of just demonstrating the technology to the public. There was a live feed on an iPad of what the sensor was producing. And you meet some very nice people at maker fairs, including some researchers who work on very complex issues like making a cleaner stove. So they came to me at the maker fair and say, hey, we've got a problem that we need some help with because we have all this expensive bulky equipment in the lab, but we can't actually take it into the environment to make it very useful. I asked, well, what's your problem? And it was, well, we need to find out how dirty kitty litter is. So this is the dirtiest job. This is fresh kitty litter though, so we're not worried about him catching anything. But we set all this stuff up so that we could understand various well, first of all, just to test the sensor technology, but also to determine, what brand of kitty litter is the best for the home. Along the way, we were able to compare the cheaper sensor with the more expensive, and while there were certain issues with this sensor, some noise, we generally found that there was a decent agreement between this unit and some more expensive units. So we were very happy with that result. This is what it actually looks like in the natural habitat of the house cat. This is not my house, so I didn't want to embarrass my cat by showing her bathroom. And this is what we found in testing all this stuff. So kitty litter generates a noticeable amount of dust, so that might be a concern for someone with allergies. We tested regular kitty litter with the kind that mixed with the pellets, and we found that the pellets were generally better in terms of keeping dust down. And along the way, we also established a baseline PM concentration for a home, and we found that our homes were pretty similar in this. So that was great to kind of understand the territory a little bit better. And now that we had kind of this data part figured out, we still had to figure out how to manufacture it. And so, luckily there's a maker lab that specializes just in 3D printing. They also do Arduino classes, and I'm going to teach an Arduino class there, this summer. But they were very helpful in printing out some, 3D printed prototypes to hold the sensors. And along the way, this generated some interest from, the TOW Center or the TOW Center at the Columbia School of Journalism, where we all kind of got together and brainstormed as journalists, like, so what does this mean for us? How can this be helpful, and what concerns do we have operating in the space of IoT? Number one, we thought privacy was an issue because we don't necessarily know in the future if this data could be triangulated to find a person. Some of the best projects that have been done in the space so far involve a lot of crowdsourcing and a lot of other people and citizens putting together their own sensors to help you aggregate your data, but there needs to be an agreement, an above-board agreement that data couldn't be traceable back to them if that's what they want. Sunlight is another issue. As journalists, we often talk about shining light on public officials, but we have to be above board in our own process, keep everything open source, so that makes us more accountable. But also a distribution. So open source leads to the idea of teaching people how to build this stuff, and that's the way, again, that you get kind of more people involved and better quality data. Back to the Fab Lab. Now that we established kind of the guidelines for making this happen, we used a Modella router here, which is very handy for making very quick prototypes of a PCB. So, I mean, normally you'd take, like a week to get something fabbed up in China and sent over, but this can be done in 10 minutes. So, very rapid prototyping. And this is a messy messy prototype, but it's something that we thought would be very helpful for us. And the idea was to boil it down to a kit that basically anyone could create in a fab lab, bring the cost down. And so this is a kit that was devised specifically for journalists at the Internews Earth Journalism Network. So this is us training. And so very quickly, I'm just going to say that this all kind of, for me, I visualize this in terms of a cycle. You begin with bits in a fab lab, you turn those into atoms, but those atoms can help you create data that then give knowledge to the community that empowers and allows you to affect change. And when you affect change, you open the opportunity for more bits to be made into atoms, into data. So this is a cycle, I think, that's very important to consider when you're talking about how community fab labs can help the community, even beyond just creating stuff, but creating more information for the community. If you would like to build one yourself, this is all open source. The name is trademarked, but the technology is not. I mean, this is all Arduino open source. We use Xively to post a lot of this data on the internet. So if you want to grab that URL and build one at home, feel free. Otherwise, if you have any questions, comments, or if this could be useful for you in any way, feel free to shout out at gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at Matthew Ryan. But thank you very much. I'll be around if you have any questions. Thank you.